Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Place. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day filled with rushing and noise, or maybe you're simply the kind of person who prefers falling asleep to gentle wonder rather than silence. Either way, you're exactly where you need to be. Tonight, we're going to explore something truly extraordinary, something that's been unfolding quietly all around you since the moment you were born. We're going to talk about plants, about growth, about the slow and patient miracle of green things reaching toward the light. There's something deeply comforting about plants, isn't there? They don't rush. They don't worry. They simply grow, one cell at a time, responding to sunlight and water, and the turning of seasons with an ancient wisdom we've barely begun to understand. And tonight, as you settle into your blankets and let your breathing slow, we're going to journey together through forests and gardens, through microscopic root systems and towering canopies, through deserts and rainforests and the quiet windowsill where a single leaf catches morning sun. Before we begin, if you enjoy these sleepy explorations into science and wonder, consider subscribing to this channel. Give this video a gentle like if you're feeling generous, and know that your presence here right now helps this little corner of calm grow, much like the plants we're about to discuss. There's no pressure, of course, just an invitation. So go ahead and adjust your pillow one last time. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Unclench your jaw if it's tight. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. For the next while, you can simply listen, or drift, or fall asleep whenever your body decides it's ready. The facts will continue either way, soft and steady, like rain on leaves. And if you wake in the middle and catch a sentence about photosynthesis or the secret life of roots, you can smile and let it carry you back down into sleep. Are you ready? Then let's begin this journey into the quiet, patient world of plants and growth. There's a Japanese practice called Shinrin-yoku, which translates to forest bathing, and it's exactly what it sounds like, though no water is involved. It's the practice of simply being present among trees, of breathing forest air and letting the green world work its subtle magic on your nervous system. Scientists have discovered that when we spend time among plants, especially trees, our cortisol levels drop, our heart rate slows, and our immune systems actually strengthen. The trees release compounds called phytoncides, airborne chemicals that protect them from insects and decay, and when we breathe these compounds, our bodies respond with calm. It's as if the forest is sharing its peace with us, molecule by molecule, breath by breath. So even now, as you lie in bed thinking about plants, your mind is doing a kind of forest bathing, wandering among green thoughts, and that alone may be enough to ease you toward sleep. A single large tree can release enough oxygen in one day to support 2 human beings for an entire year. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere right now, as you're drifting toward sleep, a oak or maple or eucalyptus is quietly performing alchemy, taking in carbon dioxide and sunlight and water, and through the patient magic of photosynthesis, creating the very air you're breathing. And it does this without thought, without effort, simply by being what it is. Every leaf is a tiny factory, every chloroplast a microscopic miracle, splitting water molecules and rearranging atoms into sugar and oxygen. The tree doesn't know it's keeping you alive. It's simply growing, simply being, and yet in that simple existence it's performing one of the most generous acts imaginable. You owe your next breath to a plant somewhere, and your next, and your next. Breathe in, breathe out. Feel that connection. Bamboo is perhaps the most patient, and then suddenly the most ambitious plant on earth. When a bamboo seed germinates, it may spend 5 entire years doing something that looks like nothing. 5 years where, if you watched it every day, you'd see no visible growth at all. But beneath the soil, invisible to your impatient eyes, the bamboo is building a massive root system, spreading out in all directions, creating infrastructure, preparing. And then, after 5 years of apparent stillness, the bamboo shoots up at an astonishing rate. Some species can grow 3 feet in a single day. You could almost watch it happening, hour by hour, as it reaches toward the sky with all the energy it's been storing. It's a beautiful reminder that growth isn't always visible, that sometimes the most important progress happens underground, in darkness, in the quiet times when nothing seems to be happening at all. Maybe you're in a bamboo season right now, building roots. There are plants called resurrection plants, particularly one called Selaginella lepidophylla, and they have the most extraordinary relationship with patience and survival. When water becomes scarce, these plants don't die. Instead, they curl into tight brown balls, looking for all the world like dead things, like failures. They can stay this way for years, decades even, dried and dormant and waiting. And then when water finally comes, when rain finally touches their curled leaves, something miraculous happens. Within hours they unfurl, turning green again, resuming photosynthesis, coming back to life as if they'd never left. They've been called the plant that cannot die, though that's not quite accurate. They simply know how to wait, how to pause, how to trust that water will come again. There's something deeply comforting in that, isn't there? The knowledge that dormancy isn't death, that sometimes the most vital thing is simply to wait, curled and patient, until conditions improve. Trees communicate with each other through an underground network of fungal threads called mycorrhizal networks, and scientists have taken to calling this the wood wide web. These fungal filaments connect tree roots to each other, creating a vast subterranean internet through which trees can share resources and information. A mother tree, large and established, can recognize her own offspring through this network and send them extra nutrients, helping saplings survive in the deep shade of the forest floor where sunlight barely reaches. Trees under insect attack can send chemical alarm signals through the network, warning their neighbors to boost their defensive compounds. Even when a tree is dying, it can send its remaining resources to others through this network, one last act of generosity. The forest, it turns out, isn't a collection of individuals competing for resources. It's a community, a conversation, a vast collaborative organism where even death becomes a gift. You can rest now, knowing that connection runs deeper than we ever imagined. A seed knows things it shouldn't be able to know. It knows somehow which direction is up and which is down, even in total darkness underground. It knows when the soil temperature is right for germination. It knows how deep it's buried and whether it has enough resources to make the dangerous journey to the surface. Some seeds can remain viable for decades, even centuries, waiting for the precise conditions they need. The oldest seed ever germinated was a Judean date palm seed, roughly 2,000 years old, recovered from an ancient fortress and coaxed into life by patient scientists. The resulting tree, nicknamed Methuselah, grows today in Israel, a living bridge between ancient and modern worlds. Every seed carries this kind of patience, this kind of timeless potential, and perhaps you do too, carrying possibilities that won't germinate until their moment arrives, until conditions are exactly right. There's no need to force anything. Growth knows its own timing. The Venus flytrap, that famous carnivorous plant, has evolved one of the most sophisticated counting systems in the botanical world, and it does this without a brain, without neurons, without anything we'd recognize as a thinking organ. The trap's trigger hairs must be touched twice within about 20 seconds for the trap to close. This prevents the plant from wasting energy on false alarms like raindrops or wind-blown debris. But that's where it gets truly extraordinary. After the trap closes, if the plant detects continued struggling inside, it counts these movements. After 5 movements, it begins releasing digestive enzymes. After more movements, it releases more enzymes, proportional to the size of the prey. The plant is doing mathematics, cost-benefit analysis, decision-making, all through electrochemical signals passing through its leaves. It's a reminder that intelligence, awareness, responsiveness, these things might be far more widespread in nature than we ever imagined. Even a plant can count. Even a plant can decide. Let that wonder carry you deeper into rest. Sunflowers do something extraordinary before they mature, something that looks almost like joy. Young sunflowers track the sun's movement across the sky, turning their faces to follow the light from dawn to dusk, then turning back east overnight to greet the sunrise. This phenomenon, called heliotropism, is driven by different growth rates on opposite sides of the stem, cells lengthening and shortening in rhythm with the light. But here's the beautiful part. Once the sunflower matures and blooms, it stops this tracking and settles facing east, greeting each sunrise in permanent orientation. Scientists have discovered this eastward-facing position warms the flowers faster in the morning, attracting more pollinators. The sunflower's youth is spent in movement, in tracking, in learning the sun's path. Its maturity is spent in stillness, in facing the direction of new beginnings. There's a metaphor there, perhaps, about when to move and when to be still, about how wisdom sometimes means choosing your direction and then resting in it, warmed by your own choice. The smell of fresh-cut grass, that green scent of summer lawns and baseball fields, is actually a chemical distress signal. When grass is cut, it releases compounds called green leaf volatiles, chemical alarm bells warning other blades that danger is near. These compounds can trigger neighboring plants to boost their defensive chemistry, preparing for potential attack. But here's the thing. These same compounds that signal distress to plants signal something entirely different to us. To human beings, the smell of cut grass is almost universally perceived as pleasant, fresh, even nostalgic. It reminds us of childhood summers, of outdoor safety, of growth and green things. There's something strangely beautiful in this disconnect, in the way one organism's alarm can be another organism's comfort. Perhaps it's a reminder that distress and peace are sometimes just matters of perspective, of translation, of which language you're speaking. And right now, in this moment, you can choose the language of peace. Moss is among the oldest land plants on Earth, having colonized terrestrial environments roughly 500 million years ago, long before flowers, before trees, before grass. Moss was the pioneer that made the land habitable for everything that came after. It grows without true roots, without flowers, without seeds, without any of the complex structures that later plants evolved. It simply exists, holding water, creating soil, turning rock slowly into earth through the patient chemistry of its existence. You can find moss in the Arctic and the tropics, in deserts and rainforests, on every continent including Antarctica. It asks almost nothing from its environment, and yet it creates everything, building the foundation for ecosystems. There's something deeply humbling about moss, about its antiquity and its modesty, about the way it persists without fanfare in the shadowy, damp places larger plants ignore. Sometimes the oldest wisdom is the simplest. Sometimes the greenest life is the smallest. Let yourself be small right now, modest as moss, asking nothing, simply existing, and let that be enough. Plants can hear. This sounds like fantasy, but research has shown that roots grow toward the sound of water flowing through pipes, even when no moisture is present in the soil, even when no other cues are available. The plant is detecting vibration, acoustic signals, and responding to them by directing growth. Other studies have shown that plants may respond to the vibrations of insect chewing or the buzz of pollinators, altering their chemistry or nectar production accordingly. They don't have ears, of course, don't have anything like our auditory system, but they sense vibration through their cells, through the movement of water within their tissues, through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. The world, it turns out, is full of conversations we never knew were happening, of signals and responses occurring in languages we're just learning to hear. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't need to understand every language to know that connection is happening, that the world is always speaking, always listening. You can rest in that knowing. There's a phenomenon called crowned shyness, observable in certain forests where trees of the same species grow near each other. If you lie on your back and look up through such a forest, you'll see something remarkable. The canopy doesn't form a solid ceiling of leaves. Instead, there are gaps, channels of light between each tree's crown, as if the trees are politely avoiding touching one another. Scientists aren't entirely sure why this happens. Some believe it's to reduce the spread of leaf-eating insects between trees. Others think it's about reducing damage from branches scraping together in wind. Still others suggest it might be about light optimization, ensuring each tree gets adequate sun. Whatever the reason, the effect is breathtaking. These rivers of light flowing between green borders, this careful mutual respect among giants. Even trees, it seems, understand something about boundaries, about giving each other space to grow. You can take that lesson into sleep with you tonight, this image of light flowing between respectful borders, of strength that doesn't need to crowd or conquer. The Pando aspen clone in Utah is a single organism, one genetic individual consisting of 47,000 tree trunks all connected by a single root system, and it's considered one of the oldest and heaviest organisms on Earth. Pando, which means I spread in Latin, weighs an estimated 6 million kilograms and may be over 10,000 years old, possibly much older. Each trunk that appears to be an individual tree is actually a stem arising from this vast underground network. When one trunk dies, others continue. When fire sweeps through, which aspen evolved alongside, the root system survives and sends up new shoots. Pando has witnessed the end of the Ice Age, the arrival of humans to North America, the rise and fall of civilizations, and it persists, spreading slowly, patiently, sharing resources among all it stems through that invisible connection below. It's a living reminder that what appears separate may actually be one, that individuality might sometimes be an illusion, that the deepest truth might be connection. Let yourself feel connected as you drift now, part of something vast and ancient. Desert plants have evolved to grow with the most extreme patience imaginable. The saguaro cactus, that iconic symbol of the American Southwest, grows extraordinarily slowly. A 10-year-old saguaro might be only 4 inches tall. By age 30, it might reach 3 feet. It won't grow its first arm until it's at least 75 years old, often much later. These cacti can live for 200 years, and they spend the vast majority of that time simply waiting, storing water, enduring, existing. They bloom for just a few weeks each year, opening white flowers that smell like melon and last only a day each. The rest of the time is waiting, the slow accumulation of life in an environment where water is a rare gift and every resource must be cherished. There's something profoundly calming about this timescale, about the way a saguaro redefines what growth means, what success means. Perhaps you don't need to grow quickly. Perhaps slow is fine. Perhaps a lifetime of patient existence punctuated by brief blooming is its own kind of perfection. Rest in that pace. The roots of a single plant, if you could lay them end to end, would astonish you. A mature rye plant grown in laboratory conditions was carefully excavated and measured, and researchers found it had 13 million roots with a combined length of over 380 miles. This doesn't even include the root hairs, microscopic extensions that increase surface area for water absorption. If those were included, the total length exceeded 6,000 miles. 6,000 miles of living tissue, all existing to support one plant, most of it invisible, most of it unknown to anyone who simply looked at the grass above ground. That's what it takes to stand upright and green in the sun, that massive invisible infrastructure, that commitment to reaching out, to connecting, to drinking deeply from the earth. We see the flower, the leaf, the fruit, and think that's the plant. But the truth is mostly underground, mostly unseen, mostly about connection and foundation and the patient work of sustenance. Remember that when you judge your own growth, most of what matters is invisible. Plants can recognize their relatives. White mustard plants, when grown in pots with siblings, develop smaller root systems than when grown with strangers. They're not competing as aggressively with kin, presumably because cooperation with relatives provides evolutionary advantages. Beach evening primrose plants, when grown with siblings, allocate more energy to reproduction and less to root competition. Somehow, through chemical signals or other mechanisms not entirely understood, plants can identify genetic relatives and alter their behavior accordingly. This suggests a level of social complexity in the plant world that challenges our assumptions about consciousness, about awareness, about what it means to recognize another being. Family, it seems, matters even to a flower. Connection runs deeper than we knew. And tonight, as you rest, you're part of a family too, the family of living things, all breathing, all growing, all connected through chains of chemistry and evolution that stretch back billions of years. You belong here. Close your eyes and feel that belonging. The fastest growing plant in the world might be a species of bamboo, which we've mentioned. But in the ocean, giant kelp competes for that title, growing up to 2 feet per day in ideal conditions. These aren't technically plants, but rather brown algae, though they photosynthesize like plants and form vast underwater forests that rival terrestrial forests in their ecological importance. Swimming through a kelp forest is like flying through a cathedral. These long golden brown fronds rising from the sea floor toward the surface light, swaying in current, creating shelter for fish and invertebrates and marine mammals. Each kelp individual can grow over 100 feet long, sustained by holdfasts that grip the rocky bottom and bladders filled with gas that keep the fronds afloat and close to the sun. And they achieve this incredible growth rate not in rich soil but in salt water, extracting nutrients from the ocean, turning them into structure and oxygen and life. It's a reminder that growth can happen anywhere in any medium, that what you need might be all around you already, dissolved in the environment you're swimming through. Just reach out. Just grow. The resources are there. There's an ancient bristlecone pine tree in California's White Mountains that has been alive for over 5,000 years. 5,000 years. It was already old when the pyramids were built. It was already ancient when Rome was founded. It has lived through the entire span of recorded human history and much more before that. It grows at high elevation and harsh conditions, on rocky soil with little water, and perhaps that's why it's lived so long. Adversity slows growth, makes wood dense and resistant to rot and insects. The tree grows so slowly that some annual rings are barely visible even under magnification. It has learned the secret that might be the deepest secret of all, that endurance sometimes matters more than speed, that the long life belongs not to the fastest growing but to the most persistent, the most patient, the one most willing to grow slowly in difficult places. There's no rush. This tree whispers across millennia. There's no rush at all. Let that whisper reach you now as you sink deeper into your pillow. You're doing beautifully. There's no need to track where we are in the journey or how many facts remain. The numbers don't matter. What matters is this moment right now where your breathing is soft and your body is heavy and the weight of the day is finally starting to lift. If you're still awake, that's perfectly fine. If you've drifted and come back, welcome back and know you can drift again whenever you're ready. The plants will keep growing. The facts will keep flowing. And you can simply rest. Some plants practice something called allelopathy, which means they release chemicals into the soil that inhibit the growth of competing plants. Black walnut trees are famous for this, producing a compound called juglone that prevents many other species from growing near their roots. Sunflowers do it too, and even the humble garlic, releasing compounds that discourage neighbors. At first this might seem aggressive, even cruel, but it's simply survival, simply the plant protecting the resources it needs to continue growing. And here's the interesting part. Some plants have evolved resistance to these chemicals, or even benefit from them. Certain flowers actually grow better near black walnuts, thriving where others can't. It's a reminder that what's toxic to one organism might be nourishment to another, that the same environment that excludes some creates opportunity for others. You don't need to thrive in every environment. You just need to find the one where your particular chemistry works, where what you bring is welcomed rather than rejected. That environment exists. Let sleep help you find it, even just in your dreams. The oldest known plant fossil is about 470 million years old, a tiny thing called Cooksonia that stood only a few centimeters tall. It had no leaves, no roots, just a simple branching stem with spore-filled capsules at the tips. From this humble beginning, every plant on Earth today has descended. All the magnificent diversity of forests and flowers, of grasses and ferns and orchids, all variations on that ancient theme of green life reaching upward toward light. 470 million years of adaptation, of trying new strategies, of evolutionary exploration. And the experiment continues. Every plant alive today is part of that ongoing story, that vast collaborative epic of green things learning to exist on land. You're witnessing it right now, as you breathe oxygen produced by the latest chapter in that story, as you rest in a world greened by eons of plant persistence. Evolutionary time is so vast it becomes almost meaningless, almost meditative. Let its vastness carry you beyond the smallness of worry, beyond the brief concerns of a single human life. Photosynthesis, that fundamental process by which plants turn light into life, is staggeringly efficient, and yet somehow also incredibly inefficient. A plant typically converts only about 3 to 6% of the light energy it receives into chemical energy stored in sugars. The rest is reflected or lost as heat. By human engineering standards, this seems wasteful. But here's the thing, this process has sustained virtually all life on Earth for billions of years. That so-called inefficiency has built every forest, grown every crop, fed every herbivore, and through them every carnivore. That inefficiency produced the oxygen you're breathing. Sometimes what looks inefficient is actually perfectly sufficient. Sometimes good enough, repeated across billions of individuals and millions of years, becomes extraordinary. You don't need to be perfectly efficient. You don't need to capture every opportunity or convert every experience into optimal growth. You just need to keep going, keep reaching toward your light, and trust that across the span of your lifetime, you'll have captured enough. You'll have grown enough. You already have. Plants don't just grow upward toward light, they also exhibit gravitropism, the ability to sense gravity and orient themselves accordingly. Roots always grow downward toward the pull of earth, toward water and stability. Shoots always grow upward against gravity toward light and air. Even if you turn a plant on its side, it will reorient itself within hours or days, roots curving down, stems curving up. This happens because of statoliths, specialized cellular structures that settle to the bottom of cells like tiny stones, triggering a redistribution of growth hormones that causes the reorientation. The plant literally feels which way is down, feels the weight of gravity, and responds. It knows up from down without eyes, without a brain, through elegant cellular machinery refined over hundreds of millions of years. You have this same sense, this proprioception, this deep body knowledge of orientation. Even lying down, even in darkness, some part of you knows which way is up, knows where you are in space. Trust that inner sensing. Trust that even when you feel lost, some ancient part of you knows the way. There's a concept in plant growth called apical dominance, where the main central stem of a plant suppresses the growth of lateral buds below it, maintaining the plant's upward growth and preventing it from becoming too bushy too quickly. But if the apex is damaged or removed, those suppressed buds suddenly activate, sending out side branches, creating a fuller, bushier form. Gardeners use this principle in pruning, removing the top to encourage branching. But it's also a beautiful metaphor. Sometimes what feels like damage, like loss, like being cut back, actually triggers new growth in directions that were always possible but suppressed. Sometimes losing the apex, losing the main plan, losing the trajectory you thought was yours, frees you to branch in ways you never imagined. The potential was always there, dormant in lateral buds, waiting. And sometimes it takes a pruning for that potential to activate. If you've been cut back recently, if something feels lost, consider that you might be about to branch in ways more beautiful than the single upward path you imagined. Rest now. Let the branching begin in dreams. Mangrove trees grow in saltwater, in coastal zones where land meets ocean, in conditions that would kill most plants. Salt is toxic to plant cells, disrupting their water balance and poisoning their chemistry. But mangroves have evolved multiple strategies to handle this. Some filter salt out at the roots, never letting it enter. Others allow salt in but excrete it through specialized glands on their leaves, leaving visible salt crystals behind. Still others concentrate salt in specific leaves that are then shed, removing the salt from the system entirely. These trees essentially drink seawater and thrive, creating crucial ecosystems that protect coastlines from erosion and storms, that provide nursery habitat for fish, that sequester carbon, that bridge the world between ocean and land. They grow in the difficult in-between places, the margins, the borders that belong fully to neither one realm nor another. And they're essential. The margins matter. The in-between places matter. If you've ever felt like you don't fully belong to any single category or world, like you exist in the salt zone between, consider that you might be like a mangrove, thriving in a place that seems impossible, creating an ecosystem nobody else could create. That's not exile. That's unique purpose. A tree's rings tell stories. Each ring represents 1 year of growth, wider in good years with plenty of water, narrower in drought years or years of stress. But the rings record more than just water. They record fire scars, frost damage, insect outbreaks, volcanic eruptions. Scientists can read these rings like history books, reconstructing climate patterns from centuries ago, dating ancient structures built from timber, understanding solar activity through carbon isotopes in the wood. The tree remembers everything it lived through, written in the very structure of its body. And the remarkable thing is that the tree doesn't shed these memories. It carries them, incorporates them, builds upon them. Every difficult year becomes part of the foundation for every year that follows. The drought year's narrow ring still contributes to the tree's strength. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost. Your difficult years are in your rings too, part of your structure now, contributing to the strength that holds you upright. They're not scars to be ashamed of. They're proof you survived and the foundation for everything you've become since. Let that truth settle into your bones as you settle into sleep. Dandelions, those cheerful golden flowers most people consider weeds, are actually marvels of reproductive strategy. A single dandelion plant can produce up to 2,000 seeds in a season, each attached to a delicate parachute of silk-like fibers called a pappus. These seeds can travel miles on the wind, spreading the plant's offspring across vast distances. But here's the most interesting part. Dandelion seeds don't need to be pollinated to form. They produce seeds through a process called apomixis, essentially cloning themselves without sexual reproduction. This means every dandelion you see might be genetically identical to its parent, a strategy that allows them to colonize disturbed soil quickly without waiting for pollinators. And yet, despite this seemingly simple strategy, dandelions are extraordinarily successful, growing on every continent except Antarctica, thriving in disturbed soils where other plants struggle. Sometimes the simplest strategies are the most effective. Sometimes what looks like a humble weed is actually a master of adaptation and survival. Don't underestimate the power of persistence and simple strategies repeated faithfully. Don't underestimate yourself. Certain plants have evolved relationships with ants that border on the miraculous. Acacia trees in Africa and Central America produce hollow thorns that ants inhabit, along with protein-rich nodules the ants harvest for food. In exchange, the ants aggressively defend the tree from any animal that tries to browse its leaves, and even clear away competing vegetation from around the tree's base. The relationship is so tight that some species of ants live nowhere else, and some species of acacia can't survive without their ant guardians. Neither can exist without the other. They've become one system, a compound organism, plant and insect merged into a single defensive unit. It's called mutualism, this arrangement where both partners benefit, where the whole becomes greater than its parts. And it's everywhere in nature, more common than competition, more fundamental than conflict. Pollination is mutualism. The mycorrhizal networks are mutualism. Your gut bacteria are mutualism. You are never just yourself. You're always a community, always in relationship, always part of systems larger than your individual body. Rest in that. You're not alone. You're not even separable from the living world around you. Succulents store water in their thick leaves or stems, an obvious adaptation to dry environments, but the strategies they use to minimize water loss are elegantly complex. Many succulents use a variation of photosynthesis called CAM, which stands for crassulacean acid metabolism. Normal plants open their stomata, the tiny pores in their leaves, during the day to take in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. But this also allows water to escape. CAM plants instead open their stomata at night when it's cooler and humidity is higher, storing the carbon dioxide and organic acids, then closing their stomata during the hot day, and using the stored carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. It's like holding your breath through the dangerous hours and breathing only when it's safe. This inversion of the normal pattern allows them to photosynthesize with as little as 1/10 the water loss of a regular plant. They've learned to work with the constraints of their environment, to thrive not by changing the desert but by changing their own rhythm. Sometimes adaptation isn't about changing your circumstances. It's about changing your rhythm, your timing, when you're open and when you're closed. There's wisdom in strategic timing. There's survival in knowing when to hold and when to release. Vines climb without muscles, without joints, without any of the machinery animals use for movement, and yet they accomplish feats of navigation and reach that seem almost intelligent. A cucumber vine's tendril will sweep through the air in a circular pattern, searching for something to grab. When it touches a suitable support, the cells on the contact side stop growing while cells on the opposite side continue, causing the tendril to curl around the support. Then the entire tendril forms a spring-like coil that acts as a shock absorber, preventing the vine from being torn loose in wind. The vine has found, grabbed, and secured itself, all without nerves, without thought, through elegant mechanical responses refined over millions of years. Some vines can even recognize the best supports, growing more vigorously when they touch sturdy structures and withdrawing from flimsy ones. This is plant intelligence, not like our intelligence, but intelligence nonetheless. Responsiveness, discrimination, goal-directed behavior emerging from chemistry and structure rather than neurons. The vine knows what it needs and reaches for it. You can do the same. Even in sleep, some part of you knows what you need and reaches for it. Trust that reaching. Trust that wisdom. The concept of plant blindness describes how humans tend not to notice plants, to see them as background rather than as individuals. Studies show people remember animals from scenes much better than plants, can list endangered animals but not endangered plants, and generally treat the plant kingdom as green wallpaper, rather than as thousands of distinct species with unique characteristics and stories. But here's the thing. Once you start noticing plants, once you begin to learn their names and strategies and histories, the world becomes immeasurably richer. The green background suddenly resolves into a forest of individuals, each with its own architecture, its own solutions, its own quiet miracle of existence. The cure for plant blindness is attention, curiosity, the willingness to look closely at what you've been trained to ignore. And maybe this is true beyond plants. Maybe you've been trained to ignore your own slow, steady growth, to dismiss it as background to the more dramatic events of life. But your growth matters. Your patient greening matters. You're not background, you're the story. And you deserve your own attention, your own noticing. As you drift toward sleep, notice yourself with new gentleness, the way you'd notice a rare plant, with wonder at your persistence. Leaf shapes are incredibly diverse, from the simple oval of a magnolia to the compound complexity of a fern, to the needle-thin form of a pine, and each shape represents a solution to specific challenges. Broad leaves capture more light but lose more water and are vulnerable to being torn by wind. Needles conserve water and withstand winter but capture less light. Compound leaves with many small leaflets can orient each leaflet independently for optimal light capture, and can shed damaged leaflets without losing the whole leaf. Lobed leaves create turbulent airflow that cools the leaf and enhances gas exchange. Waxy coatings prevent water loss. Hairs reflect excess sunlight or trap humidity. Each leaf is a negotiation between competing needs, a compromise shaped by millions of years of trial and error. And yet every leaf, regardless of shape, performs the same fundamental miracle, turning light into life. The details vary, but the mission is constant. Maybe there's comfort in that. Maybe your particular shape, your specific set of characteristics and compromises, is exactly what's needed for your environment, for your challenges. You don't need to be a broad leaf if you're growing in the desert. You don't need to be a needle if you're in the rainforest. You just need to be the shape that works for where you are. The smell of rain on dry earth, that fresh, clean scent called petrichor, is partly the smell of plant oils. During dry periods, certain plants release oils that coat rocks and soil, possibly to inhibit seed germination until moisture is sufficient for seedling survival. When rain finally comes, these oils are released into the air along with other compounds, creating that distinctive smell. It's the smell of relief, of the break in drought, of moisture returning to the waiting earth. And humans across all cultures tend to find this smell pleasant, comforting, hopeful. We're responding to the same signal the plants are, the promise of water, the end of the difficult dry time. Our bodies remember at some level that we too are dependent on rain, on the greening that follows, on the plant life that feeds us. The smell of petrichor is the smell of life beginning again. And maybe that's what each sleep is, a kind of rain on dry earth, a breaking of the drought, moisture returning to soil that's been holding on, waiting. Let this sleep be that kind of rain for you. Let it soak in deep. Let the oils release and the scent rise and the green things in you remember how to grow. Cherry blossoms, particularly the Japanese flowering cherry called sakura, have become symbols of transient beauty, of the fleeting nature of life, and there's a reason. The blossoms last only about a week, sometimes just days if wind or rain comes. The trees explode in pink and white, transforming landscapes into something dreamlike, and then just as suddenly it's over, petals falling like snow, covering the ground in fragrant drifts. The Japanese have a word for this awareness of transience, mono no aware, a gentle sadness at the impermanence of things, combined with appreciation of their beauty precisely because they don't last. The cherry blossoms teach this every year. Beauty doesn't need to be permanent to be real. Joy doesn't need to last forever to be worth experiencing. This day, this moment, this breath, they're as transient as cherry blossoms and as beautiful and as worthy of your full attention while they last. And then they fall, and that's okay too. The tree will bloom again. You'll have other moments, but this one right now is yours. Let yourself be present in it, even as you drift toward sleep, even as it passes. Epiphytes are plants that grow on other plants, not as parasites but simply as renters, using the host plant for physical support while gathering their own nutrients from rain and air and decaying debris. Orchids are often epiphytes, and bromeliads and many ferns, creating entire aerial gardens in the canopy of rainforests. They've solved the problem of the crowded forest floor, where sunlight barely penetrates, by moving upward, by growing on branches high in the canopy where light is abundant. They're not stealing from their host tree, not taking its nutrients or water, just using its architecture as a platform. It's a reminder that you can build on what already exists without taking from it, that there's space in the structures already standing for new life to establish. You don't always need to start from the ground. You don't always need to build everything from scratch. Sometimes you can begin from a platform someone else built, and rather than being parasitism, it's just intelligent use of existing resources, and often both parties benefit, the epiphyte getting light, the tree getting nothing taken and possibly gaining some advantages from the ecosystem the epiphytes create. Use what's already there. Build on existing structures. There's no shame in it, only wisdom. Trees in urban environments face challenges their forest cousins don't encounter. Compacted soil around roots, limited water, reflected heat from pavement, pollution, salt from winter de-icing, physical damage from vehicles and construction. And yet urban trees persist, and they matter enormously. A single street tree can reduce local air temperature by several degrees through transpiration and shade. It can intercept thousands of gallons of stormwater runoff, preventing flooding and water pollution. It can absorb air pollutants, provide habitat for urban wildlife, reduce noise, and demonstrably improve the mental health of people who live near it. Studies show recovery from surgery is faster in hospital rooms with views of trees. Crime rates are lower on streets with trees. Property values are higher. Trees make cities livable, and they do this while surviving in conditions far from ideal, with their roots constrained and their branches pruned and their existence always somewhat precarious. They adapt, they persist, and their contribution is profound, even more necessary precisely because the environment is so harsh. Maybe you're an urban tree, persisting in conditions that aren't ideal, adapting as best you can, and maybe your contribution matters more, not less, because of the difficulty of your environment. The harshest places need green life most. Rest now, urban tree. You're doing necessary work just by being. Mycorrhizal fungi, which form those symbiotic partnerships with plant roots we mentioned earlier, existed before roots did. Ancient plants had neither roots nor leaves, just simple branching stems, and they partnered with fungi to absorb water and nutrients. The fungi received sugars from the plants, photosynthesis, and the plants received access to a vastly larger surface area for nutrient absorption through the fungal network. This partnership was so successful that it may have been essential to plants' colonization of land. The fungi taught plants how to feed from soil. And today, roughly 90% of plant species still maintain these partnerships, still trade sugar for nutrients with fungal partners, still rely on a relationship that predates roots themselves. It's one of the oldest collaborative relationships on Earth, 400 million years old and still going strong. There's something beautiful about faithfulness to what works, about relationships that persist across evolutionary time because they're genuinely beneficial to both parties. You don't need to reinvent yourself completely with every season. Some partnerships, some strategies, some ways of being are worth keeping, worth honoring, worth maintaining across the years. Know what's essential in you and keep it, regardless of what else changes. Halfway through the journey now, though it doesn't matter where we are really. The facts will continue as long as you need them. Your eyelids might be heavy now. Your thoughts might be drifting like seeds on wind, landing softly on random images, detaching, drifting again. That's perfect. Let them drift. There's nothing to hold on to, nothing to remember. Just this gentle flow of green thoughts, of growing things, of patient miracles unfolding in slow motion all around you, all around the world, right now as you rest. Dormancy is not death, though it can look like it. Many plants in seasonal climates enter dormancy as winter approaches, withdrawing energy from their leaves, shutting down their metabolism, becoming cold tolerant or freezing tolerant, waiting. Bulbs underground, seeds in soil, buds on branches, all dormant, all waiting, all alive but paused. The plant isn't dead. It's protecting itself, conserving resources, persisting through the unsurvivable by not trying to survive in the usual way. Some seeds require dormancy, won't germinate without a period of cold or dark or scarification, as if they need to prove winter has passed before they'll trust spring enough to emerge. Dormancy is strategy. Dormancy is wisdom. And maybe you've had dormant periods too, times when nothing seemed to grow, when you felt paused, shut down, waiting without knowing what you were waiting for. Maybe you're in one now. It's not death. It's not failure. It's dormancy, and spring always follows winter, and the energy you're conserving now will burst forth when conditions are right. Trust the dormancy. Rest in it. Let it protect you. The tallest trees in the world are coast redwoods, some exceeding 380 feet in height, taller than a 30-story building, taller than the Statue of Liberty. These trees can live for over 2,000 years, and they grow in groves along the foggy Northern California coast, in a narrow band where conditions are exactly right. The fog matters. Redwoods are so tall that their roots can't pump water to their highest branches, so the upper canopy absorbs moisture directly from fog, drinking the air itself. The fog also keeps temperatures moderate and reduces water stress. Without fog, these giants couldn't exist. They're proof that even the tallest, the most impressive, the most seemingly self-sufficient organisms are completely dependent on their environment, on conditions beyond their control, on gifts freely given by weather and geography. Humility for giants. Even the redwoods need help, need the fog, need the rain, need the mycorrhizal fungi, need the whole ecosystem that supports them. You need help too. You need your particular fog, your conditions, your ecosystem. That's not weakness. That's the nature of life. Everything depends on everything else. Close your eyes and feel yourself held by invisible conditions, by the fog of support you might not even notice most of the time. Some plants are photoperiodic, meaning they track day length and use it to time crucial life events like flowering. Short-day plants flower when nights become longer than a critical length, signaling the approach of winter or the end of summer. Long-day plants flower when days exceed a certain length, responding to spring or early summer. Day-neutral plants don't care about photoperiod at all. But the remarkable thing is the precision. A plant can detect the difference of just a few minutes of light, can tell when the day has crossed a threshold, and this triggers cascades of gene expression that transform the plant from vegetative growth to reproductive mode. The plant is reading the sky, interpreting the astronomy of Earth's tilt and orbit, using the cosmos as a calendar. You're living on a planet that orbits a star, and plants know this in their cells, in their chemistry, in their flowering time. There's something wonderful about that cosmic awareness embedded in a flower, about the way local life connects to planetary rhythms. You're part of those rhythms too, whether you notice or not. The same star that triggers flowering bathes you in light each morning. The same planetary tilt that shortens days affects your own biology, your sleep, your mood. You're cosmically connected, woven into orbital mechanics, a small green thing reading the sky. Plants don't have pain receptors, don't have a nervous system capable of suffering. And this is important to understand because plants do respond to damage, do release chemical signals, do alter their growth. When a caterpillar chews a leaf, the plant can detect this through vibrations and chemicals in the caterpillar's saliva, and it responds by producing compounds that make its leaves less nutritious or less palatable, sometimes even releasing volatiles that attract predatory insects that eat caterpillars. The plant is responding, defending, communicating. But as far as science can tell, it's not suffering. There's no central processing of the signal as agony, no consciousness of harm in any way that resembles animal pain. It's a response, elegant and effective, but not painful. There's something comforting in this, in the knowledge that the grass doesn't scream when it's cut, that the tree doesn't agonize when it's pruned, that plant life exists in a different relationship to damage than we do. They respond, they heal, they grow around wounds, but the wound isn't suffering. It's just information, just a signal to adapt. Maybe some of your wounds could be like that, not sources of ongoing pain but simply information, signals that certain adaptations are needed, and then the growing around, the responding, without the suffering part taking up residence in you. Imagine that. Imagine responding without suffering. The lotus flower is sacred in multiple traditions, partly because of its remarkable ability to emerge pristine from muddy water. Lotus leaves and petals have a unique nanostructure that makes them superhydrophobic, meaning water beads up and rolls off, carrying dirt and debris with it. The plant is literally self-cleaning, maintaining its purity not by avoiding mud but by having a surface that mud can't stick to. It grows from the mud, is fed by the mud, exists because of the mud, and yet isn't stained by it. The mud is necessary. The mud is nourishment. But the lotus has evolved a way to be in the mud without becoming muddy. This property is so remarkable that scientists have developed synthetic materials that mimic lotus leaf structure, applying the principle to everything from self-cleaning windows to stain-resistant fabrics. The lotus has taught us that you can be in difficulty without being defined by it, that you can draw nourishment from challenging circumstances without being stained, that the right structure, the right surface, the right way of being, can let hardship roll off you while still allowing you to grow from it. You can be the lotus. You can use the mud without letting it stick. Let that image carry you into dreams. Imagine yourself pristine, water-beaded clean. Forest succession is the process by which an ecosystem changes over time, especially after disturbance. After a fire or clear-cut or abandonment of farmland, the forest doesn't return all at once. First come the pioneer species, fast-growing plants that tolerate full sun and poor soil, things like fireweed and aspen and alder. They stabilize soil, add nitrogen, create shade, moderate conditions. As they grow, they actually make the environment less suitable for themselves and more suitable for the next wave of species. Shade-tolerant trees that grow more slowly but eventually overtake the pioneers. The pioneers disappear, outcompeted by the very forest they enabled. And eventually, centuries later, the forest reaches climax community, a stable state dominated by long-lived species. The pioneers are gone by then, but without them, the forest would never have returned. They sacrifice their own long-term success to create conditions for something larger, and there's honor in that. Sometimes your role is to be a pioneer, to stabilize soil, to make conditions better, to enable something that will outlast you. Your growth might make way for someone else's forest. That's not failure, that's succession. That's generosity, that's the long view. Rest now, pioneer. the forest thanks you. Carnivorous plants like the Venus flytrap, pitcher plants, sundews, and butterworts evolved in nutrient-poor environments, particularly nitrogen-poor soils like bogs and fens. Unable to get enough nutrients from the soil, they evolved the ability to digest insects and small animals instead. This is expensive. Energetically speaking, building traps and producing digestive enzymes takes resources that could go toward growth. But in environments where no one else can thrive, these strategies work. The carnivorous plants aren't stronger competitors. They're niche specialists who found a way to survive where others can't. They turn the liability, poor soil, into an opportunity by developing skills no other plants have. There's a lesson here about niches, about how sometimes the secret to thriving isn't competing directly but finding the place where your unique adaptations, however strange, are exactly what's needed. You don't need to compete in the rich soil where everyone wants to grow. You can find your bog, your niche, the place where your particular strangeness is strength. Maybe you already have. Maybe you're already thriving in a place others avoid, using skills others don't have. Value that. Honor your adaptation to your particular environment. You're a carnivorous plant, and that's magnificent. Annual plants complete their entire life cycle in 1 year or less. They germinate, grow, flower, produce seeds, and die, all in a single season. From the plant's perspective, this is success. It's not trying to live forever. It's trying to reproduce, to send seeds into the future, and then its work is done. The annual isn't less successful than the perennial that lives for decades. It's just using a different strategy, betting on producing many seeds rather than long-term persistence. And in disturbed environments, in places where conditions change rapidly, annuals often outcompete perennials precisely because of their flexibility, their ability to complete a generation quickly and adapt to new conditions. Success doesn't have to mean longevity. Success can mean intensity, completeness, doing what you came to do, and then releasing, trusting that what you've sent forward will continue. Maybe some projects, some relationships, some phases of your life are annuals, meant to be complete and intense and then finished, and that's not failure. That's a different kind of success. Not everything needs to be forever. Some things need to be brilliant and brief. Let yourself appreciate the annuals in your life, the brief, complete things that flowered and seeded and made way for the next thing. Grasses are one of the most successful plant families on Earth, covering roughly 40% of the land surface excluding Antarctica, and their success is tied to a unique adaptation. Unlike most plants which grow from the tips of their stems, grasses grow from the base, from meristems located near the ground. This means they can be grazed, mowed, burned, and they simply keep growing, unbothered, regenerating from the base that was never damaged. This adaptation co-evolved with grazing animals, grasses feeding vast herds while simultaneously thriving because of those herds, whose grazing prevented trees from shading out the grass and whose manure fertilized the soil. The prairies, the steppes, the savannas, entire ecosystems built on grass's ability to be eaten and survive. There's something powerful in that, in thriving precisely because you can withstand damage, in being useful and abundant and resilient all at once. Maybe you have this quality too, this ability to regrow from your base, from some core part of yourself that can't be consumed or destroyed, no matter what grazes on you. Maybe you've been grazed many times and grown back each time, and maybe that's why you're still here, still green, still abundant. You're grass. You're more resilient than you know. Let that knowledge support you as you rest. The hormone auxin controls much of plant growth and behavior, influencing cell elongation, root development, and phototropism. When light hits one side of a plant stem, auxin redistributes to the shaded side, causing those cells to elongate more, bending the stem toward the light. When a plant is tilted, auxin accumulates on the lower side of roots and upper side of shoots, causing roots to bend down and shoots to bend up. One molecule, one hormone, orchestrating countless tiny growth decisions that result in the plant's ability to respond to its environment. And the beautiful thing is that each cell responds to local auxin concentrations without knowing about the plant as a whole, without a central coordinator, without a plan. And yet from these local responses, coherent behavior emerges. The plant reaches toward light, roots grow down, and it all works through distributed intelligence, through simple rules followed locally, creating complex organized behavior globally. Your body works this way too, billions of cells each responding to local chemical signals, each doing its job without knowledge of the whole, and somehow you emerge from this, coherent, directed, purposeful. Trust the local wisdom. Trust that even when you can't see the whole plan, each cell knows what to do, each moment knows its direction. Auxin is flowing. Growth is happening. You don't need to coordinate it all consciously. Bamboo forests are some of the most productive ecosystems on Earth in terms of biomass creation, and bamboo itself has an unusual life cycle. Most bamboo species grow vegetatively for decades, sending up new shoots each year from spreading rhizomes underground, creating vast groves of genetically identical stems. Then, after anywhere from 15 to over 100 years depending on species, every plant in the species flowers simultaneously all around the world, no matter where it's growing. They all flower at once, produce seeds, and then die, the entire species going through sexual reproduction together. Scientists still don't fully understand how this synchronization happens, how plants separated by continents and oceans can flower in the same year, how they count the decades. It's one of nature's great mysteries, this mass flowering. And it reminds us that even plants we think we understand can harbor profound mysteries, that synchronization can occur through mechanisms we haven't discovered, that there are rhythms and patterns operating at timescales and spatial scales beyond our easy comprehension. The world is stranger and more coordinated than it appears. Rest in that strangeness. Rest in mystery. Ancient trees, those that have lived for centuries or millennia, occupy a strange place in time. They were saplings when Mozart was composing, seedlings when empires fell, already old when your grandparents were born. They've stood still in place, watching centuries pass, seasons cycling thousands of times, watching humanity change and cities rise and technology transform everything except the fundamentals of sunlight and water and soil. And yet from the tree's perspective, maybe none of that mattered much. The tree just kept growing, one ring at a time, 1 year at a time, patient, present, unrushed. It didn't try to speed up to match the human world accelerating around it. It maintained its own time, tree time, slow time, the time of growth and seasons and patience. You live in human time, which can feel frantic, which measures success in quarters and years and decades. But maybe you can also access tree time, especially here in the quiet before sleep, where one breath or 10 minutes or an hour all feel similar, all soft, all enough. Maybe right now you're in tree time where nothing needs to hurry, where centuries are just many seasons, where your whole life is just one ring in a larger pattern. Rest in tree time. Let clock time dissolve. Let there be only the slow, the patient, the rings forming in darkness. Pollination is one of nature's most beautiful exchanges. A flower offers nectar, protein-rich pollen, or just a place to rest, and in return the pollinator, a bee or butterfly or bird or bat or beetle, carries pollen to the next flower, enabling fertilization and seed production. Neither party intends this exchange. The pollinator is just feeding or seeking shelter. The flower is just being. And yet the result is reproduction, is new seeds, is the continuation of the species. It's cooperation without negotiation, mutualism that evolved over millions of years into arrangements so specific that some flowers can only be pollinated by one species of insect, and some insects can only feed from one species of flower. They've evolved together, shaping each other, until they're inseparable. Your life is full of these invisible exchanges, these mutualisms you don't consciously negotiate, but that make everything possible. The food you eat, the oxygen you breathe, the bacteria in your gut, the people whose work enables yours, the whole web of exchange and interdependence that holds up the human world. You're being pollinated and pollinating others, feeding and being fed, and you don't need to orchestrate it. You just need to be yourself, offering what you have, receiving what's offered, and the exchange will happen naturally, has been happening all along. Rest in that web. Feel yourself held in countless exchanges. Lichen is not a single organism but a symbiotic partnership between a fungus and an alga or cyanobacterium, sometimes both. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner provides food through photosynthesis. Together, they can colonize bare rock, endure extreme temperatures, survive years without water. Neither partner could do this alone. Together they're among the hardiest organisms on Earth, growing in Antarctica, in deserts, at high altitude on bare stone where nothing else can survive. They grow slowly, sometimes less than a millimeter per year, but they grow, and as they grow they break down rock into soil, creating the conditions for other plants to eventually establish. They're pioneers, creating possibility for others through their partnership. And they remind us that sometimes the way forward isn't to become stronger as an individual, but to partner, to merge, to become a compound organism where each partner contributes what the other lacks. You don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to be complete on your own. You can be half of a lichen, perfectly functional precisely because you've joined with another half. What partnerships make you whole? What collaborations make you capable of thriving in bare stone environments? Honor those partnerships. They're not crutches. They're sophisticated survival strategies. Photosynthesis produces oxygen as a waste product. That fact alone is extraordinary. The most essential element for animal life, the gas we can't survive more than minutes without, is trash to a plant, a byproduct of its food production, something it releases into the atmosphere because it doesn't need it. And we breathe that trash and call it life. The entire animal kingdom exists on plant waste. We're living on their leftovers, their exhaled breath, their garbage, and we've built entire ecosystems, entire civilizations on the foundation of what plants don't want. There's something humbling and beautiful about this, about how one organism's waste is another's necessity, about how nothing in nature is truly garbage. Everything is resource for someone, everything cycles, everything finds use. Maybe what you think of as your waste, your struggles, your byproducts, your things you're ashamed of or wish you could hide, maybe those are oxygen to someone, maybe those are essential, maybe those are the exact things someone else needs to breathe. Don't be so quick to judge what you release into the world. It might be life to someone else. And don't forget to breathe the oxygen. Don't forget to be grateful for the waste that keeps you alive. Seeds have traveled the world through ingenious mechanisms. Some have hooks or barbs that stick to fur or clothing, hitchhiking to new locations. Some are contained in fruits that animals eat, passing through digestive systems unharmed and emerging in a pile of fertilizer far from the parent plant. Some have wings or parachutes for wind dispersal. Some are buoyant and drift on water. Some are even ballistic, ejected from pods that dry and twist, and literally fling the seed meters away. Each mechanism is an answer to the same question. How do you move when you can't walk? And the answers are creative, diverse, elegant. You face similar questions sometimes, how to move forward when you feel rooted, when circumstances seem to hold you in place. And maybe the answer is like the seed's answer. You don't walk, you find another way. You catch a ride, you let the wind carry you, you wait for water, you prepare an explosion. Movement doesn't have to look like walking. Progress doesn't have to look conventional. Sometimes you disperse by drifting, by holding on to something that's already moving, by patient floating until you land somewhere new. Trust the mechanisms you've evolved for movement, even when they don't look like what others are doing. The wood of trees is mostly dead. The living part of a tree is a thin layer just beneath the bark called the cambium, and the sapwood just inside that, which transports water. The heartwood, the majority of the trunk, is dead tissue, cells that have completed their life cycle and now serve only as structure, as support, allowing the tree to stand tall. The tree is a thin skin of life surrounding a pillar of death, and this is exactly how it should be. The dead wood isn't failure. It's foundation. It's the accumulation of all previous growth, and it's what allows new growth to reach higher, to spread wider, to become larger than would be possible with living tissue alone. You're like this too. Most of your past is dead in the sense that those moments are gone, those former selves completed. But they're still part of your structure, still holding you upright, still allowing your current thin layer of living moment to exist at this height with this reach. Honor your heartwood. Honor your past selves that have completed their cycle and now serve as your foundation. They're not waste. They're the pillar that lets you stand as tall as you do. And one day your current self will be heartwood too, foundation for a future self you can't imagine yet. It's not sad, it's structure. It's how growth works. Rest now on your accumulated rings. The smell of freshly cut pine, that clean resinous scent, is from compounds called terpenes that the tree produces both as defense against insects and pathogens and as chemical signals. When you smell pine, you're smelling the tree's immune system, its chemical defense arsenal released into the air. And humans almost universally find this smell pleasant, clean, even therapeutic. There's some evidence that breathing terpenes can have mild anti-inflammatory and mood-elevating effects on humans, which is why forest bathing seems to work, why pine-scented products are marketed for relaxation. We're attracted to the smell of a tree defending itself, finding peace in what is essentially plant warfare. It's another translation issue like the cut grass smell, where the same molecules mean different things to different organisms. To the tree, terpenes mean defense, warning, protection. To you, they mean forest, clean air, calm. Neither interpretation is wrong. They're just different languages reading the same chemical text, and maybe this is true more broadly. Maybe what feels like your defensive crouch, your self-protection, your boundaries, maybe that seems like peace to someone else, like healthy clarity, like fresh air. Maybe your defenses, the walls you've built, they're not ugly. They're terpenes, they're pine scent. They're protective and pleasant at once. Breathe deep. Smell your own forest. It's keeping you safe and it's beautiful. 3/4 through now, though again, it doesn't matter. You might have lost track of facts, might be floating in a green space where individual thoughts are just textures, just the sensation of green growing things filling the space behind your eyes. That's exactly right. You don't need to track anything. You don't need to remember. The plants don't remember. They just grow, one moment to the next, and so can you, one breath to the next, until breath becomes sleep, becomes dreams, becomes morning. No rush. No urgency, just this. Grafting is an ancient horticultural technique where a cut branch or bud from one plant is joined to the root system of another, and if done correctly, they fuse, growing as a single individual. You can graft an apple branch onto a crabapple rootstock, and the resulting tree will have crabapple roots and produce regular apples. The roots never become apple. The branches never become crabapple. Each part maintains its genetic identity but functions as one organism. Some trees are grafted dozens of times, one rootstock supporting branches from many varieties, producing different fruits from different branches. It seems impossible, this merger, but plants are flexible in ways animals aren't. They accept the graft. They grow together. And it makes you wonder what parts of yourself are grafted. What characteristics or skills or beliefs came from one source while your roots came from another, and whether that's okay, whether being a composite organism is just another way to thrive. You don't have to be purely one thing. You can be grafted, integrated from multiple sources, and still whole, still functional, still capable of bearing fruit. Maybe especially capable because of the diversity of your sources. Invasive species are often plants that were brought from one continent to another by humans, either deliberately as ornamentals or crops, or accidentally as stowaways. Without the pests, diseases, and competitors that kept them in check in their native range, some of these plants thrive too well, outcompeting natives, altering ecosystems, becoming problems. Kudzu in the American South, purple loosestrife in wetlands, cheatgrass in western rangelands. The plant isn't evil. It's just growing, just being successful, just doing what plants do, which is spread and reproduce and claim resources. But the ecosystem hasn't evolved with it, doesn't have mechanisms to limit it, and so it spreads unchecked. It's a reminder that context matters enormously, that what's balanced in one system can be destructive in another, that success in the wrong place can become damage. Maybe you felt invasive sometimes, like you're too much, like your natural expression crowds out others, like you need to be controlled. Or maybe you felt crowded by someone else's invasive success. Either way, the answer is that the organism is bad. It's that the fit is wrong, the context doesn't match. Finding the right ecosystem matters. In the right place, kudzu is just another vine. In the wrong place, it's a catastrophe. You're not too much. You might just be in the wrong soil. Willow trees grow near water, and they've evolved a remarkable talent for vegetative reproduction. A branch broken off by wind or flood can stick into mud and sprout roots, becoming a new tree. Willows root easily, rapidly from cuttings, which is why they're used for erosion control, why people plant them along stream banks. The tree has learned that in its wet, dynamic environment, the ability to root from fragments is worth having. Breaking isn't death. Breaking is opportunity. A storm that shatters a willow might just be planting 10 new willows downstream. There's resilience in that, in being the kind of organism that turns damage into distribution, that treats breaking as a form of reproduction. You might be a willow. Maybe the things that broke you, the pieces that fragmented off, maybe they're rooting somewhere, becoming new versions of you, new possibilities you couldn't have accessed while you were still whole. Maybe breaking, as painful as it was also planting. Maybe downstream there are new groves growing from what you lost. You couldn't see it at the time. But that doesn't mean it isn't happening. Willows root in mud, and so do you. Variegation in plants, those leaves with white or yellow or cream patches mixed with green, is usually caused by cells that lack chlorophyll, the green pigment that enables photosynthesis. These white patches can't photosynthesize, can't produce food, and yet the plant maintains them, grows them, creates these beautiful patterns at the cost of reduced photosynthetic efficiency. Why? Sometimes it's a viral infection. Sometimes it's a genetic mutation. Sometimes it attracts pollinators or deters pests. But sometimes there's no clear advantage, and yet the plant persists in its variegation, remains beautiful and alive and slightly less efficient than it could be. Not everything about you needs to be functional. Not everything needs to be optimized. You can have your variegation, your patterns that don't make efficient sense, your beautiful inefficiencies, and still thrive, still be worthwhile, still be exactly what you are. The white patches don't photosynthesize, and the plant keeps them anyway. You can keep your non-productive parts too. You can be whole without being optimal. You already are. When forests burn, many plants are not destroyed but rather released. Countless seeds in the soil have hard coats that require fire to crack open, require heat to germinate. Some pine cones are serotinous, sealed with resin that only melts in fire, releasing seeds afterward into nutrient-rich ash on soil cleared of competition. Fireweed, aptly named, specializes in post-fire landscapes, blooming in vibrant purple across the black. Aspens resprout from roots after fire, often more vigorously than before. Fire in many ecosystems isn't catastrophe. It's renewal, part of the natural cycle, something many plants adapted to and even depend on. The forest plans for fire. It builds fire into its life cycle. And maybe you can think of your catastrophes this way too, not as deviations from the plan but as part of the plan, not as interruptions of growth but as triggers for a different kind of growth, the kind that only happens after burning. The seeds that required your fire are germinating now. The forest that's regrowing is different from the one that burned, but it's still forest, still alive, sometimes more diverse than before. Fire isn't the end. It's transformation. And you're the fireweed, blooming in purple across your own ash. Look at you, thriving in the burn zone. Some trees survive lightning strikes, and when they do, their wood develops irregular grain patterns as the tree grows around the injury, incorporating the damage into its structure. Woodworkers prize this lightning-struck wood, call it spalted or figured, and use it for special projects where the irregular beauty of survival adds character. The lightning didn't make the tree better exactly, but it made it unique, made it valuable in a different way, made it sought after by people looking for wood with a story. Your lightning strikes show, too, in the irregular grain of your personality, in the ways you've grown around damage, incorporating trauma into your structure because there was no other choice. And maybe that doesn't make you better, but it makes you unique. It makes you figured. It makes you the kind of person other people are drawn to precisely because you've survived something and it shows. You're spalted wood now. You're lightning struck and still standing. And there's a kind of beauty in that, a character that straight grain wood will never have. The strike wasn't good, but you're here. And the pattern it left is uniquely yours, worth something, maybe worth a lot. Rest now, lightning tree. The storm passed, you're still rooted. The canopy of a rainforest, that upper layer where the tallest trees reach into full sunlight, is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. It's an aerial world, a forest living on top of a forest, with plants that never touch the ground, animals that never descend, entire communities existing in the air. The trees up there are bathed in light and heat, whipped by wind, exposed to intense UV radiation. Life is harsh in the canopy, but life is abundant precisely because of the light. Down below on the forest floor, life is different, dark and humid and still, dominated by decomposition, by fungi, by things that grow slowly in shade. Same forest, different worlds, different strategies, different organisms, each layer as complex as the other. And maybe your life has layers too, canopy parts that are bright and exposed and active, and forest floor parts that are dark and slow and still processing what's fallen. You need both. You contain both. The canopy gets the attention, but the forest floor does the essential work of breaking down the past into nutrients for future growth. Honor both your layers. Don't abandon your forest floor in pursuit of endless canopy. The whole system needs the whole system. You're a rainforest. You're stratified. And that's exactly right. Winter buds are one of nature's most elegant examples of protection and patience. In autumn, before leaves fall, the tree forms next spring's leaves and flowers in miniature, wraps them in protective scales and seals them against winter. All winter long, while the tree looks dead, it's carrying spring within itself, already formed, just waiting. The bud knows what it will become. It's already that, just compressed, dormant, protected. When spring warmth comes, the scales fall away and the leaves simply expand, unfurl, become what they already were. You might be in winter now, sealed in protective scales, looking dormant, and yet spring is already inside you, already formed, just waiting for the right temperature, the right conditions to unfurl. You don't have to become something new. You just have to reveal what's already there, compressed in bud form, waiting. The tree doesn't panic in winter about whether spring will come. It knows spring is already here, just waiting its turn. You can know that too. Your spring is already inside you. The conditions will come. The scales will fall. You'll unfurl. Until then, it's okay to be a bud, sealed and patient and certain. Parasitic plants like mistletoe and dodder take resources from host plants, growing directly into their vascular tissue and stealing water and nutrients and sugars. They're plants that don't photosynthesize or barely do, instead living off the work of others. It's easy to view them as villains, as thieves, as bad plants. But they're just organisms filling a niche, using a strategy that works in certain contexts. And interestingly, many host plants tolerate parasites, continuing to grow, continuing to function, even while supporting these uninvited guests. The cost isn't usually death, just reduced growth, reduced reproduction. It's part of the ecosystem's diversity. And maybe you felt parasitized sometimes, like your energy is being drained by people or situations that take without giving back. And maybe that's real, and maybe boundaries are needed. But maybe also it's worth considering that if the tree can tolerate mistletoe and still thrive, maybe you can tolerate some energy drains and still be okay. Maybe perfection isn't zero parasites. Maybe thriving is just growing despite parasites, accepting that some loss is part of existing in an ecosystem, focusing on your own growth rather than on eliminating every drain. The tree doesn't waste energy being angry at the mistletoe. It just keeps growing. Maybe you can too. Deserts bloom after rain, and the bloom is extraordinary, sudden, a carpet of wildflowers appearing seemingly from nowhere, covering landscapes that were barren for months or years. The seeds were there all along, buried, dormant, waiting with extraordinary patience for the specific trigger of adequate rainfall. And when it comes, they don't hesitate. They germinate, grow, flower, and set seed in a matter of weeks, completing their entire life cycle in the brief window when water is available, racing against the return of drought. It's feast or famine biology all in when conditions are right, dormant when they're not. There's no moderation, no steady pace, just long waiting and then explosive brief life. Maybe you know this rhythm. Maybe your life has had deserts, long dry periods when nothing seemed to bloom, and then sudden explosions of growth and color when conditions finally aligned. That's okay. That's desert bloom life. You're not failing during the dormant times. You're just waiting, buried, viable, patient. And when your rain comes, you'll bloom like nobody's business, and it'll be worth the wait, and then maybe another dormancy, and that's okay too. Boom and bust. Bloom and wait. It's a valid strategy. It's beautiful. Rest now in whatever season you're in, knowing that if it's dormancy, bloom is written in your seeds. Root systems compete and cooperate simultaneously, and the balance is delicate. Roots from neighboring plants can engage in resource competition, growing aggressively toward water and nutrients, or they can engage in root grafting, where roots from separate trees fuse together, sharing resources. Sometimes both happen. The same trees competing above ground for light are sharing water below ground through grafted roots. It's not contradiction. It's complexity. Relationships contain multitudes. You can compete and cooperate with the same people, sometimes in the same day, and that's not hypocrisy. That's realism. That's ecosystem thinking. The forest isn't divided into competitors and cooperators. Everyone is both. Every relationship contains both. And that's okay. That's healthy even. You don't need to resolve this tension into a simple narrative where everyone is friend or enemy. They're both. You're both. The roots know this. The roots graft where it makes sense and compete where it makes sense, and they don't agonize over which is the true nature of the relationship. They just respond to conditions. You can do this too. You can hold complexity. You can compete and cooperate without needing to decide which one is real. Both are real. Let that paradox exist. Let yourself rest in complexity rather than forcing simplicity. Ephemerals are plants with extraordinarily short life cycles, sometimes completing their entire existence from seed to seed in a matter of weeks. Spring ephemerals in temperate forests, for example, germinate early, bloom before trees leaf out and shade the forest floor, set seed, and then die back all before May. They're only visible for a brief window, and the rest of the year they're dormant bulbs underground, invisible. They've optimized for one specific niche, the brief period of spring sunlight, and they ignore the rest of the year entirely. It's extreme specialization, thriving intensely in a narrow window and not even trying at other times. Maybe you're ephemeral in some areas of your life, showing up intensely for brief periods and then withdrawing completely, and maybe you've judged this as inconsistency, as flakiness. But maybe it's just specialization. Maybe you're a spring ephemeral, optimized for specific conditions, dormant otherwise, and that's not failure. That's niche strategy. You can't bloom year-round. Nobody can. The plants that try to bloom year-round live in tropics, or are annuals that die young. You're a perennial ephemeral, investing in brief spectacular display and then resting. Honor that rhythm. Let yourself be dormant most of the time. Save your blooming for when conditions are perfect for your specific needs. That's wisdom, not weakness. Roots exude compounds into the soil, chemicals that alter the soil's acidity, solubilize nutrients, communicate with microorganisms, and affect neighboring plants. This zone of influence around the root is called the rhizosphere, and it's a hub of chemical communication and biological activity far more complex than the bulk soil farther away. The root doesn't just take. It gives, it alters, it creates an environment around itself. You do this too. You exude influence, alter the environment around you, create a zone where things are different because you're there. Your rhizosphere is the space you change just by being present, the people who are affected by proximity to you, the conversations that happen because you're in the room. You don't have to be loud or dramatic to have a rhizosphere. Roots aren't loud. They just steadily exude influence, changing chemistry, enabling certain microorganisms and discouraging others. You're doing this right now, even as you rest, even as you sleep. Your presence is influence. Your existence alters the space around you. That's not pressure. That's just fact. And you can rest in that, knowing you don't have to perform or project or announce. You just have to be, and your rhizosphere will form naturally around your presence, and it will be right for you, selecting for the relationships and opportunities that match your specific chemistry. There are flowers that bloom for a single night, like the night-blooming cereus, a cactus that produces enormous fragrant white flowers that open after sunset and close forever by dawn. One night. One chance. All year the plant prepares, and then for a few hours it's spectacular, and then it's over. People set up vigils to watch the blooming happen, gathering to witness this brief miracle. The flower doesn't last. and yet it's memorable, worth waiting for, worth celebrating. Not everything needs to endure to matter. Some of the most powerful experiences are the most fleeting. Some of your best moments will be night-blooming flowers, gone by morning but real while they lasted, beautiful enough to be worth the wait, worth the preparation. You don't need to make everything last forever. You don't need to photograph and preserve and extend every good moment. You can let them be like the Sirius, blooming in darkness for one night, witnessed by whoever is present, then gracefully closing, having been exactly what they were. The memory lasts. The moment itself can be brief. That's the deal. And it's a good deal. Let the sleep be a night-blooming flower, something you don't try to hold on to, something you let unfold and then release, trusting it was beautiful while it lasted. Pioneer plants, those that colonize disturbed ground, have seeds that can remain viable in soil for decades, waiting for disturbance. Fire, flood, landslide, logging, plowing, any catastrophe that clears the canopy and exposes mineral soil triggers their germination. They're disaster specialists, opportunity grabbers showing up when everyone else is reeling. And they're essential. They stabilize soil, prevent erosion, begin the process of succession that eventually leads back to complex ecosystems. Without pioneers, disturbed land would erode into wasteland. The pioneers are bridge species, linking catastrophe to recovery. Maybe you've been a pioneer, showing up in disturbed spaces in your own life or others' lives, stabilizing, starting the recovery process. It's not glamorous. Pioneers often aren't the climax species, aren't the final form, but they're necessary. They're the beginning of healing. And if you're pioneering right now in some part of your life that feels raw and disturbed, know that you're doing essential work. You're the fireweed on the burn. You're the first green on the landslide. You're beginning something that will grow beyond you, and that's enough. That's more than enough. Rest now, pioneer. You've done the hard work of showing up in the wasteland. Plants sense touch. A vine's tendrils curl around anything they contact. Mimosa putica's leaves fold when touched. Even plants without obvious movement can detect touch and respond by altering their growth patterns, often becoming stockier and more wind-resistant when regularly jostled. This phenomenon is called thigmomorphogenesis, touch-induced growth change, and it's how greenhouse plants sometimes struggle when first planted outside because they've never experienced wind and haven't developed the necessary structural strength. Touch matters. Physical interaction with the environment shapes growth. And maybe this is true for you too. Maybe the touches you've experienced, gentle and harsh, have shaped your growth, made you stockier or taller, more flexible or more rigid, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you are shaped by contact, by friction, by the things that have pushed against you, and maybe that makes you stronger, more suited to your environment. The greenhouse plant isn't stronger than the wind-battered plant. It's just shaped by different touches. You've been shaped by your touches. That shaping is neither good nor bad. It's just how growth works in contact with the world. And you can be gentle with yourself about that, about the ways you've thickened or thinned, opened or closed, in response to the touches you couldn't avoid. Pollination syndromes are patterns where flowers evolve to attract specific pollinators. Bee-pollinated flowers are often blue or yellow, have landing platforms, produce nectar during day. Bird-pollinated flowers are often red or orange, tubular, produce lots of nectar, have no scent because birds can't smell well. Bat-pollinated flowers open at night, are often white or pale, produce strong musky scents and lots of nectar. Each syndrome is a conversation between plant and pollinator, shaped by millions of years of coevolution until flower and pollinator fit together like lock and key. The flower doesn't attract everyone. It attracts specifically the pollinator that can actually help it reproduce. Bees ignore bird flowers. Birds ignore bat flowers. It's not rejection, it's specialization. And you don't need to attract everyone either. You don't need to be appealing across the board. You need to be specifically attractive to the people who can actually pollinate your particular flowers, who can engage with you in mutually beneficial exchange. Everyone else's indifference isn't failure. It's just them not being your syndrome. Let them pass. The right pollinators will find your specific signals irresistible, and those are the only ones that matter. Rest in your specificity. Trust your syndrome. Deciduous trees drop their leaves not because the leaves die, but because the tree kills them deliberately in a controlled process. As day length shortens in autumn, the tree stops sending resources to leaves and forms an abscission layer at the base of each leaf stem, a zone of specialized cells that eventually break down, severing the connection. The tree is choosing to let go, choosing to sacrifice the leaves to survive winter, choosing loss as a survival strategy. The leaves could theoretically stay green, but they'd be a liability in winter, losing water the tree can't replace from frozen ground, catching snow and risking branch breakage. So the tree lets them go, reabsorbs what nutrients it can, seals the wound and drops the leaf. It's planned, controlled, intentional release. And maybe you need to do this sometimes too. Deliberately let go of things that are currently functional but will become liabilities. Deliberately form your abscission layers and allow the drop, not in crisis but in preparation, not because something failed but because you're choosing to survive the coming winter. The tree doesn't mourn its leaves. It knows they'll regrow. You can let go without mourning, trusting that what's meant to be perennial in you will return when conditions improve. Deciduous, not dead. Seasonal, not finished. Rest now in your autumn. Almost to the end now, though the facts could continue forever, really. There are so many plants, so many strategies, so many quiet miracles happening in every moment across this green planet. But your breathing is so slow now, so deep. Maybe you're barely hearing these words, just sensing their rhythm, the soft rise and fall of sentences like wind through leaves. That's perfect. You don't need meaning anymore. You just need rhythm. Just need the green space behind your eyes, the soft knowledge that growth is happening everywhere, including in you, even now, even as you sleep. The concept of a plant's lifespan is sometimes ambiguous. Many plants are potentially immortal, continuing to grow as long as conditions allow, dying from disease or drought or fire but not from age itself. Trees don't have a built-in expiration date like many animals do. They can theoretically live forever, just keep adding rings, keep growing outward and upward until something external kills them. Some ancient clonal colonies like Pando the aspen we mentioned might be hundreds of thousands of years old, essentially immortal as long as the root system persists. It's a different relationship with time, with mortality than animals have. Plants don't age the way we do. They don't have an internal clock counting down. They just grow until they stop, for external reasons, not internal ones. And maybe there's something freeing in that perspective, imagining life as potentially endless, limited only by external circumstance, not internal decay. Imagining that given the right conditions you could just keep growing, keep adding rings, keep reaching upward and outward forever. You won't, of course. But the plant's model of mortality is gentler, more open-ended, less about a countdown and more about responding to conditions. Maybe that's a better way to think about your time. Not running out, just growing until you don't, and the stopping won't be because you used up your allotment. It'll just be because conditions changed. That's somehow easier to accept. Water moves through a plant from roots to leaves through capillary action and transpiration pull, and the physics of this are extraordinary. In tall trees, water must be pulled up over 300 feet against gravity without any pump. The mechanism is elegant. Water evaporates from leaves, creating negative pressure that pulls more water up through the xylem, the plant's water-conducting tissue, in continuous columns held together by cohesion between water molecules. The whole system runs on evaporation, on the fact that leaves lose water to air. The tree turns a liability, water loss, into the motive force for water transport. It's powered by what it's losing. There's something profound in that, in using loss as the engine for uplift, in turning the thing that's leaving into the force that pulls what you need toward you. You lose things constantly, time and energy and people and possibilities, and maybe you can see those losses not as pure subtraction but as the transpiration that pulls new resources upward from your roots. You're not just losing, you're pulling. The leaving creates the drawing force. It's physics, it's botany. It's maybe also your life, where every loss creates space and vacuum and pull for what comes next. The water is rising, drawn by what's evaporating from your leaves. Trust the physics of loss and replacement. Fruits are the plant's way of bribing animals to disperse seeds. The flesh of a fruit is essentially payment, nutrition offered in exchange for transportation. The plant invests resources in making the fruit appealing, sweet, colorful, aromatic, and an animal takes the deal, eats the fruit, and either spits out the seed somewhere else or swallows it and excretes it later, often far from the parent plant. It's commerce trade, a deal that benefits both parties. The animal gets food. The plant gets dispersal. And the fruit itself is temporary, only existing until the deal is complete, rotting quickly after harvest, designed for brief appeal. You can see your own offerings this way. The things you create or provide aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to be attractive long enough to complete an exchange, to enable movement, to facilitate connection or dispersal or growth. And then they can rot, can compost, can break down into nutrients for the next thing. You don't need to build monuments. You need to make fruits, temporarily appealing offerings that enable exchange and then gracefully decompose. The apple isn't trying to last forever. It's trying to be delicious enough to get eaten so its seeds can travel. Make your apples. Let them be eaten. Let the seeds go. That's success. That's the whole cycle. Rest knowing your fruits have already done their work, are already traveling in the bellies of beasts you'll never meet, germinating in places you'll never see. Some plants are dioecious, meaning individual plants are either male or female, producing either pollen or seeds but not both. Holly is like this, and asparagus and hemp. This means that for the species to reproduce, both sexes must exist in proximity, and the male plants, which never fruit or seed, are entirely dependent on attracting pollinators, even though they offer no reward to the offspring, no genetic future beyond enabling the females to reproduce. The male plant's success is measured entirely by how well it supports female success. It's a strategy that forces cooperation, that makes individual success impossible, that makes the species the unit of survival rather than the individual. And maybe there's wisdom in this, in measuring your success not by your personal fruit, but by how well you've enabled others to fruit, in knowing that some roles are supportive rather than productive, and that supportive is equally essential. Not everyone needs to bear fruit. Some of us need to produce pollen to enable, to support, to play the role that makes others' success possible. And that's enough. That's a complete life. The male holly doesn't have berries and it doesn't need them. It's succeeding by being what the system needs it to be. You can rest in supportive roles. They're not lesser. They're half the species. Nurse logs are fallen trees that, in their decay, provide habitat and nutrients for new growth. In old-growth forests, you'll see rows of young trees growing on the rotting trunk of a fallen giant, the logs slowly decomposing, feeding the saplings as it disappears. The fallen tree is still doing tree work, still supporting the forest, now through its death instead of its life. And eventually the log will completely rot away, and the young trees that grew on it will stand in a row, their roots arching over the space where the log used to be, like they're standing on tiptoes on an invisible platform. The nurse log will be gone, but its influence will remain in the architecture of the trees it nursed, in the fact of their existence. You might be a nurse log right now, in decline, falling, rotting, and yet still providing, still supporting the next generation, still doing essential work even in your decomposition. Or maybe you were nursed by someone else's falling, stood on a log that's now gone, and carry the architecture of that support in your root structure. Either way, death isn't just ending. Death is feeding. Falling is supporting. Even decay is generous in the forest. Let that ease any fear you carry about your own eventual falling. You'll nurse trees even in your rot. You're part of the forest forever. Bioluminescent fungi glow in the dark, producing light through chemical reactions, and scientists still aren't entirely sure why. Some theories suggest it attracts spore-dispersing insects, or deters animals that might eat the fungus, or it might be simply a byproduct of metabolism with no particular purpose. The glow is usually dim, greenish, eerie, creating fairy-light scenes in night forests. And whether it serves a function or not, it's beautiful. It's excess. It's the forest making light for no reason humans can definitively name. And maybe you have bioluminescence too, things you do that don't serve obvious purposes, expressions that aren't efficient or justified by outcome, beauty you make because it's what you do, whether or not it attracts insects or deters predators. Maybe your glow is just byproduct, just what happens when you metabolize your experience, and maybe that's okay. Maybe it doesn't need to serve. Maybe the forest glowing in the dark is its own justification. You glow. You might not know why, it might not matter why. The darkness is less dark because of you. That's enough. Let yourself glow as you drift now, making dim light in your own inner forest, purposeless and beautiful. And so we've wandered through forests and deserts, through root systems and canopy, through the slow, patient world of green things that don't rush, don't worry, Don't wonder if they're good enough. They just grow. They just reach for light, one cell at a time, one ring at a time, responding to what comes with elegant chemistry and ancient wisdom coded in genes refined over hundreds of millions of years. They've taught us, these plants, or reminded us, of things we might already know but forget in the noise and speed of human life. They've reminded us that growth isn't always visible, that sometimes the most important work happens underground in darkness, where no one can see. They've shown us that dormancy isn't failure, that rest is strategy, that waiting is active even when it looks like stillness. They've demonstrated that cooperation is more fundamental than competition, that the whole forest is connected beneath the surface, that what looks like individuals are actually community, actually one vast organism sharing resources and information in constant conversation. They've revealed that efficiency isn't the goal, that 3 to 6% conversion of light to energy has built the entire green world, that good enough repeated across billions of individuals and millions of years is more than sufficient, is extraordinary. They've proven that you don't need to capture every opportunity or optimize every moment. You just need to keep growing, keep reaching toward your light, and across your lifetime you'll have captured enough, grown enough. You already have. The plants have shown us that adaptation takes countless forms, that there's no single right way to be, that leaf shapes and root strategies and flowering times and water storage methods vary infinitely, each one a solution to specific circumstances, each one valid in its context. You don't need to be a broad leaf if you're in the desert. You don't need to be a needle if you're in the rainforest. You just need to be the shape that works for where you are, and you already are that shape. You've been adapting all along. They've taught us about resilience, about regrowing from bases that can't be consumed, about sprouting from fragments, about treating damage as information rather than suffering, about turning fire into opportunity and dormancy into survival strategy, and fallen logs into nursing platforms for the next generation. They've shown us that breaking can be planting, that lightning strikes create figured wood, that variegation is beautiful even when it's inefficient. And perhaps most importantly, they've reminded us about time, about the long view, about patience. The bamboo building roots for 5 years before shooting skyward. The bristlecone pine growing for 5,000 years in harsh soil. The seed waiting decades or centuries for the right conditions to germinate. The tree adding 1 ring per year, carrying its whole history in its structure, building present on the foundation of past, growing slowly with no panic, no urgency, just the steady patient accumulation of existence. You're like these plants in more ways than you might realize. You're growing, even when you can't see it. You're connected to others through networks you don't perceive. You're adapted to your specific circumstances in ways that are exactly right, even when they feel awkward or insufficient. You're resilient in ways you forgot or never acknowledged. You're part of cycles larger than yourself, part of systems that have been running for hundreds of millions of years, part of the great green conversation between life and light. And right now, as you lie in darkness, as your breathing slows and your thoughts drift and sleep approaches like fog rolling in from the ocean, you're doing exactly what you need to do. You're resting, dormant for the night, trusting that morning will come without your effort, that growth will resume without your conscious direction, that you'll unfurl when the light returns because that's what living things do. Thank you for spending this time in the green world, for forest bathing with your mind, for letting these facts and images and reflections wash over you like rain on leaves. Thank you for being here, for growing your way, for adding your particular shape to the forest, your particular chemistry to the soil. You matter. Your slow, steady growth matters. Your patient existence matters. If you found peace here tonight, if this helped you settle, consider returning tomorrow night or next week. Whenever you need reminding that growth is slow and patience is strategy, and you're doing better than you think. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you're inclined, and know that these videos will be here evergreen, waiting like seeds whenever you need them. Now let yourself sink all the way down. Let the last thoughts drift away like dandelion seeds on wind. Let your body become heavy as waterlogged wood, sinking into your bed like a root into soil. Let the green thoughts fade into green darkness, into the rich dark earth where seeds wait and roots grow and everything is possible given time. Sleep well, little seed. Sleep well, patient tree. The forest is breathing around you. The world is greening in the dark. And you're part of it all, growing slowly exactly as you should. Good night.